Good evening. How's everybody? What's going on in the world, in the real world, out in the school business?
We have 3 days until spring break and we are pumped.
Now, one of my colleagues today, who's also a school retiree, she said, it's like being back in school again. I'm just wishing my life away. Every Monday, I wish it was Friday. I'm always waiting for the next break. I was like, well, how have you got yourself in that rut? She said, I don't know. Well, she's been assigned a task she doesn't like. She's having to run a search committee. And I was like, well, you know, I guess it's not a bad thing, but I get it. I mean, the school business, you're always wishing your life away. You're always wishing it was Friday or spring break or Easter or Christmas or summer. But that's normal. That's not a bad thing. So, yeah, I guess everybody is excited about the break coming up. Oh, my.
Yeah, we still have over a month till ours. Ours is not until April.
Oh, no.
The week after, Easter.
Oh, no. Oh, no. You need something around the first of March, um, if you want to retain teachers, because you get in the doldrums of winter. It's cold, it's wet. Start when you leave home, start when you get home. Um, it's hard for teachers to get through that. It really is. Um, I've got a picture here somewhere in the archives, and I couldn't find it in a year's time, so I'm not going to look. I'm at the big house tonight, so somewhere here is a picture of me shoveling snow when I was principal at New Hope. That was be 40 years ago. No, I think maybe that was in 85 or 86. We had a big winter blizzard. Of course, we don't have those anymore. The weather has moderated so much in the last 40 years. I can't believe it. But we had a big blizzard, and we had it coming. I think it was on like January 1st. We were supposed to come back to school on January 2nd, and we had a blizzard, and we were out of school. Power was out for a week. And then we were out of school for 2 weeks. So we got no breaks until June. None. No Easter, no spring break, no work days, no nothing. And we had the attrition rate was just unbelievable. Teachers, I mean, veteran teachers quit. It was just like the Bataan Death March. I mean, it was awful. Absolutely awful. But that was a good thing for me. I learned early on. And so Carolina says a transformer is on fire and she's lost power. But yeah, you need to space your times out some. And um, I believe it's better to have 2 or 3 days break, maybe 2 or 3 times, than try to save them all up like we used to try to do. But what do I know? All right, welcome everybody. It's good to see everybody tonight. Appreciate the case studies last week. Went real well. Y'all are doing really well, doing better each time. So we'll talk about the case study when I get through with the notes tonight before we get to EC. So here's the things that I read this week that caught my eye. Danya talked about the importance of IEP timelines. Now, one of the things that I say to you is if you're the IEP or the LEA rep at the IEP meeting, you need to be scripting the meeting so that you're paying attention to what's going on. Now, I had a couple of people talk this week said they were surprised. The AP was there and really participating, but the principal was there and didn't say anything. And one principal was just on virtually and didn't say anything. And I was like, well, that's how it's supposed to be. One person's the LEA rep, and whoever that person is, the other one is just there. The principal's there as an interested party, but don't get caught in the crossfire of that. If you're the LEA rep, you're supposed to be scripting and responding. If not, you sit there quietly if the principal's fulfilling that role. But you need to make sure that you understand that. But one of the things I also talk about in IEP meetings, if you're a LEA rep and you not sure or don't know, or the reg ed teacher doesn't show up, don't grab somebody out of the hallway, postpone, put it back. If there's a question arises, postpone, put it back, unless, as Johnny pointed out, you're on a timeline for your compliance headcount. Now, the reason you did that is because you were, you didn't schedule your IEP reeval in a timely manner. Now, Liz probably knows more about this than I do, but one of the things that I always used to remind, and again, I'm not an EC person other than I probably am EC, that you need to start 60 days ahead. Don't wait 30 days. When you don't have full-time, and now in Charlotte Mecklenburg, it wasn't a big deal because we had full-time psychologists there and we had full-time CTs, compliance technicians. But when you're in a smaller district where you don't have all that support staff and you may be doing the privatized school psychologists and testing where you have to get on their appointment calendar, they don't work for the district, you're just, you're hiring their services, you better start 60 days ahead. You better not wait. And Danya pointed out that they needed to delay, but they couldn't because if they did, they would have been out of compliance and the kid would have dropped off the head count. Well, that's because you didn't plan ahead. So Liz, chime in on that one. What do you think about what I just said? Tell me how wrong I am.
Well, as the MTSS coach, I count days before we even make a referral because I know that they need the 90 days, and I have to have everything that can be done ahead of time before an EC referral can be made.
Yeah.
So observation of the classroom, observation of fidelity of the intervention, enough data, screenings done for vision and hearing, because you don't want to wait and make a referral to EC and find out the child fails their vision and then the family can't get glasses. Like, in 3 years, it's really made me count days and really keep track of the numbers. So yeah. Before it even gets to EC, we try and give them as much heads up before it's coming so they know what's coming. And when I go to EC PLC every week, they say, Liz, do you have any referrals you think are coming to us within the next 3 or 4 weeks? And I've got to be thinking ahead and make sure I have all my data.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how fast the time goes, especially on reevals. Kids that are already in the program and they've got to have a reeval, and that their IEP has to be updated by this day. One of the things that normally happens is people it gets on the calendar 30 days ahead. That's okay in Charlotte Mecklenburg, where you've got plenty of people and help, and you've got staff psychologists. And social workers. What about in districts where you have to hire those people? You better start at 60 days. You don't want to the whole point is you don't want to get in the middle of a meeting and there be an issue, but you're afraid to postpone, and then you do the wrong thing because you're afraid if you postponed, you'd be out of compliance on the reeval and the kid would drop off the head count. And as Liz said, same thing with intervention. You got to count your days. You got to hit your timelines. This stuff is all time critical, time sensitive, and it's the law. And if you get out of compliance, we get in trouble. The principal has to keep the head count for MTSS or assign somebody to do it. I mean, there's head counts and all this stuff, folks. And head count means you're getting paid for them. And when they drop off your head count, guess what happened? You don't get paid for those kids. And people's salaries and livelihoods get affected. So you're playing for a lot. And so that people get their check on time. And as we know from a couple of districts here lately, Durham and Gaston, if people don't get their checks, they have no sense of humor about that. I don't know why. They do not. And so you got to make sure people get their checks. So that was a good catch by Danya. I appreciated that. Tamala talked about employee assistance, that it really helps with retention. And she's exactly right. Employee assistance helps with retention. That's a good thing most of the time. I've told you my story when it's a bad thing. I had a crack addict. They knew she was a crack addict when they hired her back in the 90s. But she was hired as the good example for one of these special, I think it was Project Success, one of these special programs, but she didn't last long until she fell off the wagon. And then employee assistance kept me from being able to hire a long-term sub because they had to hold her job for 6 months. I just had to do a day-to-day sub, which is not a good thing. It was a good thing for her, but we weren't going to retain her anyway. As soon as her contract, as soon as the year was out, she was end of year, she was gone anyway. But most of the time, employee assistance is a good thing to help with teacher retention, and that's one of the biggest issues in our business right now. Tamala also talked about the ethics of fundraising. Tamala sees on the screen tonight. Let me say this as a blanket statement, and I've already told you what a bad person I was running the illegal candy room. In violation of pretty much everything in the world, especially the child nutrition program. There is no ethics in fundraising. That's kind of like, a fish that don't stink. Fundraising is nothing ever ethical about fundraising. You just got to stay inside the legal guidelines. Yes, you should be concerned about the ethics of it. That means, what have I told you? Best fundraising is none. Don't do it. It's not an ethical thing to do. You can do it legally, but not ethically. That's impossible. Can't be done. I think Letitia made a good point that budgeting follows priorities. It does not mean dividing it up equally. Dividing it up equally means that some people get what they need and others don't. It's kind of like the Leandro case. The state divides all the money up equally, and that's enough for some because they've got more to go with it, but it's not enough for others. Let's see. Letitia talked about you got to be careful disciplining EC students, and that is correct. We'll talk a little more about that tonight. She also mentioned we're getting ahead here on some of the discussion boards, but these are good things, good notes. On reports of sexual incidents or crimes or violations, whatever you want to call them, don't investigate. Get in touch with the police first. You're not qualified to investigate sexual crimes. And the problem that you get into is you think it's a sexual harassment, and you start investigating, and then you find out, he grabbed me and said, wait a minute, he grabbed you before he said this to you? Yeah, well, it's no longer sexual harassment. Now it's sexual assault. Uh-oh, we've already started questioning. We didn't get in touch with the resource officer, the police. Uh-oh. So any sexual, any sexual stuff, you need to go to the police and get started with them in case, even if it's just harassment, because in case, if there's any physical contact, it has left the harassment realm, and now we're in the assault realm. So make sure. Don't make that mistake of thinking, oh, this is just a simple case of he said something nasty to her. That's not, better not make that assumption. You are not qualified to do investigation of sexual allegations. Kristen, referring back to case study 2, talked about grants to bridge money gaps. The problem with grants, and I've said this before, and I want to reiterate this again about grants. Grants always want in kind, IN space KIND. What does that mean? Anybody know what in kind means? In kind means we expect you to give something or match something. And usually they want you to give or match the same amount that they're giving you. If they're giving you $100,000, they expect $100,000 worth of personnel or something in kind from you. That's why people pursue federal grants the most, because most federal grants have the smallest amount of in kind. And they also allow you usually the largest amount of administrative fees. So, for example, if you got a grant and you had to hire some people, how do you get them paid? Well, it has to go through your payroll department. Well, I mean, that costs you money. And so the problem with a lot of grants, especially state level or private grants, is they put a cap like 5% on how much administration you can pull out of the grant to pay for the things that you do to administer the grant. The minimum, it takes 7% to pay the back office just to write a check, by the way, 7%. And see, most federal grants will let you go 12 to 15% on administrative costs and things that it's costing you, like to pay the power bill and things like that. If it's a program that, that keeps, all right, you're going to run, you got a grant to do an after school program. Will that cost you more money on the power bill? Absolutely. Well, will it cost you more on the heating and cooling? Absolutely. Will it cost more supplies in the bathroom? Yes. Will you have to pay for more custodial? Yes. Will you have to? It's not just the people that you hire to run the after school program. Think about all the associated costs that go with it. That a lot of times what they say is that's the in-kind part. You have to eat that part. We expect you to pay for the extra custodial, the extra supplies, extra power. And a lot of times that costs you just as much as the money that they gave you. There is no free grant money, is my point. It's how much is it going to cost you? So you got to know that. So this notion, we'll just get grants and that'll bridge the gap. No, it won't. Sometimes it involves, you got to raise money to pay for the in-kind for the grant, and more than you would have had to raise to start. That's why people chase federal grants, because they have the smallest amount of in-kind that you have to give back, and they have the largest amount of administration fees that you can pull out of it, because federal grants are usually for disadvantaged, for economically disadvantaged. And it's not that they're just more generous person. Most federal grants are coming to places that are kind of Title I type situations. And they know you don't have the money to do the in-kind. They know that you don't have the money to pay the back office in the district. And that's why people choose federal grants. But you don't get federal grants if you're at Ardrey Kell. If you've got blue AstroTurf on your ball field at a public school, you're not going to get a federal. And they do at Ardrey Kell High School. They have blue AstroTurf on their field. And so they're not getting a federal grant. So that's how that works. Wanda reminded us that you can't, your fundraising can't compete with food service because that's federal. We all know that. Jeff made a good point that be careful about selling food items because, a peanut truck rolls through town now and 15 kids fall out. I mean, I've never in my life, kids are allergic to everything in the world. You bring a peanut in, it's like having a knife. Got to be careful about food allergies. I wouldn't sell any food. I used to sell candy by the truckload. I wouldn't do it anymore, but that was 30 years ago. Wanda was surprised that in your local budget, if you revert funds or don't spend everything they allotted you, that next year they'll take that much off your allotment. Yes, they will. You need to plan. That's why you need to have a budget that plans out what you're going to spend your money on at the first of the year. When we talk about the 5 priorities in budgeting, again, the reason why you do a budget with all of your accounts, especially your local money, is at the end of the year, you don't revert any money back. Whatever you revert back, you don't get the next year. They take that off of your base for the next year. Got to understand that. If you plan, that won't happen. Danya pointed out that the point of these case studies, in her opinion, is to get a conscious mind shift. I believe we told you that. We're trying to change your lens. I thought that was pretty good. Melody had an excellent EC protocol and an example of scripting in hers, Melody. She showed you how to do a script, how to script an EC meeting, did a really good job. LaShonda made a really, really good point that in talking about Leandro is that good teachers follow the money. That is exactly right. Good teachers leave poor districts and go to wealthier districts. So not only do poor districts not have local wealth where they can add to and buy more teachers, they can't keep the ones they've got because other places can money whip them. I mean, we were famous in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. If we went somewhere and we saw a good teacher somewhere that was in one of the neighboring districts, we could, first thing we'd tell them is we'll give you a month and a half salary for summer for just as a supplement. a month and a half. You want, you can not, you can get your 10-month salary, just have it spread over 10 months, and we'll pay you in the summertime when your expenses are less. We'll give you 3/4 of a check for both of those months. You know, I absolutely hired a young teacher one time. I hate to say this because I'm the one that hired her. So that this reflects more badly on me than it does her. So at the end of the first month, she came and she said, "My check is short." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "It's not as much as they said it would be." And I said, "Well, let's look at it." And I said, I saw immediately, I said, "You do realize that um, you had your check spread over 12 months?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "But you understand if they take 10 months and spread it over 12, it will be less." She said, "No, I wanted that much every month for 12 months." Can't make that up. I wish I was smart enough to thought of that. But I'm the one that hired. Full disclosure, that was me that hired somebody that was that dumb. And so, but again, so what we would tell the young teachers in Charlotte Mech is it's tough to make it here. You know, it's hard to make it. Get your money in 10 months, and then we'll give you a month and a half in the summer when it's cheaper for you to live, and you can get you a side hustle, get you a side job to make up that other half month's pay. And you only got to make up a quarter for each month, and so that's what they did, and that helped us. But you know, but the downside of being in Charlotte was the cost of living. The apartments, you know, I had a young woman that I hired at the high school, and she quit after the first month and said that she couldn't afford it to live in Charlotte. I said, "Well, tell me about your expenses." And she said, "Well," I said, "That's your new Acura out there in the parking lot?" "Well, yeah." And I said, "Where do you live?" She said, "Well, I've got a townhouse on Park Road. I didn't want to live with roommates." I said, "I'm the principal of this school. I can't afford a townhouse on Park Road. What are you talking about?" I said, "It appears to me that your monthly bills are more than your gross pay, much less your take-home pay." "Well, what were you thinking was going to happen?" And so, yes, we paid more, but it costs more. But some young people wanted to be, you know, in the city. They wanted the extension of the night, but they were chasing that. Um, you know, that college nightlife thing, they were chasing it. So they came to Charlotte to keep the party going. The problem is most of them live with people who were in the service industry, and they would be out all night and come in with the same clothes as the night before, or stamps on their hand and all that business. And so it's, you know, it's a tough situation. But back to Leandro on all this is um, the better paying places, the ones that aren't struggling for money, that can add local wealth, get better teachers. The teachers, the better teachers flock to them, and that is true. Whether that's right or wrong, it is true. That's exactly right. Um, let's see. Um, Okay, I've already covered that. Scripting, we've already talked about that. Tanya talked about MTSS. She's got a short version that, you know, of reporting on what MTS looks like. We won't need that. I've got one tonight, but Tremaine, yeah, Tremaine made a good point. Is you better be scripting and learning how the rules about EC, because you'll probably have to be the LEA rep one day. You will have to be. There's no probably to it. Nobody wants to do that. The low person on the totem pole AP always has to take that job. That's an always. Randy said something that kind of stuck with me and kind of bothered me, that his principal would say this, that, you know, when talking about the budget, who helped him with the budget, he said, well, sometimes he runs things by one of the APs, but too many cooks in the kitchen spoil the dinner. Your budget should go through your school improvement team. It has parents, it has community members, it has teachers. If it's secondary, it has students. Now, I'm not telling you that I was always the best at that. but I learned, you know. When I was a child, I acted and spoke as a child, but when I got older and better, you know, I was principal for 14 years or 17 years, 14 years. I got better as I went and I learned. It takes a lot of the pressure off of you. You put the money behind the priorities. It's not Dale's decision. Our school improvement plan said we want to put money behind math and science. So when we put the money behind them, it wasn't Dale's improvement plan. It was the school improvement, and everybody understood. You get buy-in, you communicate, you collaborate. Not too smart just to do it yourself, and that way you get your own way. Not really a good idea. Last thing I want to talk about is to skip past 2. I didn't say anything. I think I might have on one of them, but I usually catch it on 3. When you fill out the graphic organizer for your resources on skip task 2, where you identify the money and the persons responsible, I want to see a name. And I don't mean teacher or social worker or principal. I want to see Kizzy. I want to see Josh. I want to see Megan. Teachers never did anything. If you don't have a person's name, it will not happen. See, this is preparing you. See, the template that you're using now is basically what you'll do as a principal when you fill out your school improvement. And the first rule of school improvement plans, first rule, you can't put anything on the plan that you don't have money in hand for. Let me say that again. If you don't have the money in hand, you can't say, well, we're going to fundraise and we're going to get, no. Or we hope to get this grant. No. If you don't have the money in hand, it does not go on your school improvement plan. And when you do your school improvement plan, if you send it in and it doesn't have who's responsible for it, guess what they do? They send it right back. Because they know the same thing as I do. If you don't have a name on it, it ain't happening. That's just the way the world works. So for the persons responsible, the fiscal resources, we need to see dollar amounts with dollar signs in front of them. And for human resources, we need to see, or personnel, we need to see who the person is that's going to do this. Now, sometimes I will approve something like new hire. We're going to hire a new MTSS person. We're not doing that yet, but we're going to hire somebody. Okay. But now you need to make sure that you understand that this is, that we're going to hold you accountable until you get them on board. So the principal has to understand that anything that they put on there that says this is going to be a new hire and that we approve is when we go back and that didn't get done, you can't claim, well, the new hire didn't do it, or well, no, that's on you. So what we would have them do in CMS is where they were going to say, we just say principal, we'd have them put their name there. You're responsible. If you don't have the person now, when the budget's approved, you're going to get the money to hire this person. So in lieu of that, you are the person responsible. That's what we made them do there. Now, some districts will let you put new hire on there. I wouldn't let you do new hire. I can trust you. But when you put your name on there, it's a different story. You don't tend to forget about stuff like that then, if you put your name on. It's kind of like I had an issue in May one year at an elementary school over on the west side, Ashley Park, I believe it was. And their excuse was, well, our person in charge of that is new. What do you mean new? I don't remember I don't know everything, but I supervised this school. I don't remember you hiring a new person recently. No, she was new in August. It was May, folks. And that was the excuse that they didn't do what they had said that they would do, was, we had a new person. No, she was new. What's Dale's rule? She was new till lunchtime the first day. After that, she was part of the problem, part of the solution. What do you mean in May, claiming that we didn't do this year that we were required to do because we got a new person in August? That was August. This is May. 6 months, 7 months, 8 months later. What are you talking about? This is on you. And that's what I said to the principal. This is you. This is, you know, that you didn't have her do this. It's not about her. This is about you. This person's been here since August. What do you mean she's new? People in the central office have no sense of humor about stuff like that. I can tell you, we can't have. I mean, our job is to make sure that you are hitting your metrics. We're doing all the legal things, that we're doing all the financial things, because when we get it wrong, we get punished financially usually. So you got to make sure that you're hitting all those. So in your fiscal and human resources, on human resources, I want to see names, either in 2, but definitely I've got to have them in 3, or I won't approve your marketing plan. I got to see names. All right, let's talk about EC. We're right on time tonight. And so I'm not going to go over this one. Let me see. Let me share my screen. I hit the wrong button. I'm sorry. There it goes. All right, let me close that. Okay. Okay. This thing is 63 slides long. I'm not even going to go but to 1 slide. You can read this. If you're not familiar with these 2 terms in exceptional children, you need to spend some time with this slideshow. Inclusion versus mainstream. Now, the inclusion model is the teachers go to the students, where the EC teacher partners, collaborates with the regular ed teacher to provide instruction in the regular classroom to those EC children. Mainstreaming is separate classroom for some of the day, and then when they are mainstreamed into a regular classroom, there's no EC support. It's just like PE or something like that, art. These are the 2 models. Now, I get people all the time who rant and rave and say to me is, I don't know why we changed to inclusion. It's not near as good as mainstream. And well, that's true. Well, then why did they do it? It's 30% cheaper. Let me say that again. It's 30% cheaper to do inclusion versus mainstreaming, and it meets the letter of the law. Now, parents a lot of times don't like it at all. They don't feel like their kids are getting the services that they need. Well, they're not getting as good as they did in the mainstreaming model, but it's 30% cheaper, and that's why school districts went to it. Now, your 4th case study is going to be about this. That's why I said you might want to spend some time with this slideshow, because our 4th case study is this exact in a situation. Now I've got it set in Peru because it throws you off. But it's all about the inclusion model. It's what it's all about. Parents come in complaining about it. So you might want to spend some time with this. If you don't know the difference between the inclusion exceptional children's model, teachers go out into the rooms and partner with the teachers to help the kids, versus the mainstream model where kids go to the regular EC teacher's classroom for some blocks of the day, and then other regular teachers without support. You need to spend some time with this slideshow. So there it is. All right. I don't want to do that one yet. I don't do that one. All right. So what I do want to do is start with FERPA tonight. And then, of course, you got the Parents' Bill of Rights for regular ed kids now. People say, well, oh, that's all new. And it's not new at all. It's just this. What it means is if you know FERPA, all kids get FERPA now. That's all the Family Privacy Act, Parents' Right Bill is. It's just gives them FERPA rights. And so if you don't know about FERPA, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, you might want to spend some time with this one as well. And it tells you, and there's a handbook that goes with it, but this is the website. You need to understand it. And right here, I really like the frequently asked questions section. And it has some scenarios for you. It has a bunch of them. I'm not going to sit there and read them to you, but pretty much any question that you would have is answered right here. We'll just do the first one. A student has opted out of directory information and wants to be anonymous in an online course. Are we required to allow the student to take the course anonymously? No. Normal information that's not personal in nature is not protected. Under FERPA, a student may not use his right to opt out of it to prevent school officials from identifying the student by name or disclose electronic identifier or institutional email address in class. People in class have to know who you are. You can't hide behind FERPA for things like that, because that's for some nefarious means. An eligible student that opted out of directory information has left the school. Now that the student is no longer in attendance, may the school disclose that student's directory information? No. Required to notify parents and eligible students of their rights under FERPA? Yes. I mean, okay. Law enforcement, is that an educational record? No. I've been very careful to, again, the standard is different for school administrators than law enforcement. We are not the same. And so they have pretty much any scenario that you can think of under FERPA. So that's the first thing when we start talking about EC. First thing is, what is your delivery model? You should know what your delivery model is. Even though you've got EC people in your district, you should know what the delivery model is and what they're supposed to get. And then that informs you about MTSS. Everybody knows that before they go into this delivery model, they're identified and becoming exceptional children. They're in an intervention program. As Liz was talking about, she's got to count days. There's the 90 before the 90 now. 3 tiers. Each tier in MTSS is 30 days. And as you work through the tier and you don't get out and you're not making any progress, eventually after 90 days, you get a referral to EC and they start another 90 days. And now students make the mistake of thinking at the end of that 90 days, if they aren't doing better, they'll just place them in EC. No, it's 90 days before they even test them. You cannot rush the test. And this notion that, well, a parent can come in and just say, I want my kid tested. It's not that easy. It's not that easy, but I wouldn't do it anyway. Even there are some exceptions where a parent could come in, but I would not do it. I would put the kid through the process, because later on they may change their mind, and that won't go well for you. So let me close that one, and I want to stop us there and have a little discussion. Do we have any EC teachers on board with us tonight? I don't think we do. I think we've got one in the other group. All right, I'm gonna there you are, Adrian. I'm sorry. Adrian, what do you do? I was getting ready to act like I was an EC teacher. I wish I was that smart. When parents come and say, just go ahead and test him, what do you do?
We have to go through the school psychologist to do all that. I don't do the testing. We may do some initial things in the classroom, just observations and stuff like that. But
yeah, you're doing anecdotals. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so when a parent comes in and says, I want my kid tested, you should refer them to the school psychologist and let them negotiate that with them. And they may or may not test them.
Right.
But the important part is that parent basically has to sign their life away to get that psychologist to do that, so that it won't boomerang back on you or the psychologist if they change their mind down. School personnel should not deal with that at all. That's why I said in some cases it does happen, but you don't initiate. It goes to the school psychologist, and they negotiate that with the parent one way or the other. And they get everything signed legally. It might take about as long to get everything done legally, but that's not part of the process that Adrian is talking about in terms of anecdotals, where you're collecting qualitative anecdotal information by watching the kids. We don't do the testing. The teachers don't do testing. And so when this notion is they come in and say, teacher, I want my kid tested, or the principal or the LEA rep, the AP, we don't do the testing. and we can't change our 30, 60, 90-day process. If you want to talk about testing, you have to make an appointment and talk with the school psychologist. And they're going to most of the time tell you no, but even if they do, they're going to make you sign your life to get that done. Now, Liz, before I tell my CMS story, your question or your input?
I was just going to say that we have really locked down. Can you hear me? Because I'm using my
Yeah.
earbuds. Yeah, okay. We really locked down on when a parent has a referral or a request for EC evaluation, we have to honor that. And it's a legal process we have to follow. So we ask for it in writing, either
Right.
a written letter or in an
Right.
email. And it goes to our EC lead.
Mm-hmm.
Which in some situations it might be the school psychologist, but you have to you're supposed to respond within 7 to 14 days
Right.
to that parent request. Even if you feel like you're not going to move forward with an
Right.
evaluation, you need to sit and listen to their concerns, because sometimes they might have information from outside testing, or there might be other health impairment like ADHD that we are aware of. And so we don't ever tell a parent, no, we're not going to do it until there's a team that sits down. But during that process, as the MTSS coach, they will reach out to me and say, hey, Liz, do you know about this student? Look and see over the last few years, what supports have you put in place? And please provide me with any data. So I always turn that over. And even if the EC team decides to move forward with an evaluation, even if there's a lack of data, so the student wasn't in interventions, or we don't have enough progress monitoring, we run interventions concurrently with the EC evaluation process that could take 90 days.
Right.
So I work very closely on the intervention side with the EC team, and they'll tell me, yes, we're moving forward with an evaluation. And then I hold myself super accountable for getting that data on a weekly basis so that the psychologist can analyze it. And then they use the intervention data, especially if it's a SLD referral, specific learning disability, looking at reading, writing, or math. They have to have the data over that 90 days to make that determination. They no longer use a low achievement rating in reading or math without knowing the interventions were in place, because oftentimes, if we're really good, we close that gap and we get that kid to not need that EC support if interventions are done right. And sometimes they do need that support.
Yeah. That discrepancy model is kind of on the way out that Liz just referred to. That gap score, that discrepancy model, because of MTSS. That's the whole notion, is to do that. Now, Adrian, what Adrian was talking about is we don't do that as teachers. They don't. And what Liz is talking about, there is a person designated to handle that parent. Now, I'm not saying that it's this way everywhere. I have never been involved where it wasn't the school psychologist, because they have the testing records, and the parents usually brought some outside testing. Usually the point person, when we had a parent that would come in and say, I want my kid tested, the protocol was they went immediately to the school psychologist. But Liz is right. You only have a certain number of days to respond. But that person, the 4 districts that I worked in, the psychologist was the point person. The parent came in and said, I want kid tested. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be that way. There might be some place where it's different than that. That's why it's like in hiring. You got to find out what's going on in your district, just like MTSS. What are we supposed to be doing? Things vary from district to district. My experience has always been school psychologist was in charge, always. Not the EC staff. It's kind of a conflict of interest for them. You understand that, the conflict of interest, the people that are trying to work with this person, and then they're being asked to test this kid or make a decision to test this kid, puts them in a conflict. And a lot of times what it does is throws them under the bus with their colleagues. Whether we realize it or not, it's a comment on how well our colleagues are serving these kids when we just move them straight to testing. And that's why the psychologist is not one of your colleagues in terms of your teachers. That's why if that's something in the district and you have any say so, you need to say this needs to be the psychologist. We don't need conflict of interest. We don't need people who are teaching the kids. We don't need colleagues that have to work together. to get involved in this because it is insulting sometimes. The psychologist is outside of that, and that's why they are the perfect person. They know about testing, I mean, the whole deal. Carolina, you got a question or a comment?
I have a student currently who her category for eligibility is intellectual disability, and her
Uh-huh.
parents wanted her tested for autism as well because they believed that she had
Of course
or
they
has
do.
autism. So I reached out to the school psychologist, and her response to me was, if we give her a secondary eligibility, does that change anything that is currently in place for her already? And I said no, that she has all the supports in place, even if she were to have a secondary
Yeah,
eligibility. And she said, well, then she needs to do third-party testing because her educational needs are what matters here, and she's already getting her educational needs. So they denied testing her for autism. So
perfect example. Thank you, Carolina. That's why you go to the psychologist. That's exactly why. She just explained to you much better and a lot better than I can why the psychologist needs to be ramrodding when that process when parents come in and won't, because they know all the ins and outs of testing and they understand all of that stuff. But that's a perfect example. Thank you, Caroline. That's exactly why your psychologist needs to be the traffic cop on that. They know all that stuff. Now, one of the things that Carolina just said right there is one of my pet peeves, and I'll try not to get in too long a rant over it, is that kids are being misidentified intentionally nowadays, and it really bothers me. And they aren't getting the supports they need because there's much smaller stigma attached to autism than there is to intellectual disability. But you know as well as I do, autistic kids are high functioning. Intellectual disability kids are not high functioning. But every parent wants their kid to be autistic now rather than SLD or IA, or ID, whatever the nomenclature that you use now. I still prefer SLD. But the problem with that is autistic kids are high functioning. They don't get the same supports that SLD kids do. It's different. But every parent now wants their kid to be placed autistic. And the sad part of that is, and to Carolina's point, if we place this kid autistic, they won't get anything different than they're getting now, unless the parent says, once they're autistic, I want them out of that intellectual disability. And then they get less, and then you harm the child. But well, there's a cottage industry now in placing kids as autistic that I would venture to say, this is just my experience, it's anecdotal. Half the kids that are placed autistic now today are not autistic. No way. It's just way to ease their current, salve their parents' conscience, and we're harming kids by doing that. If we continue with the same services, I don't have a problem if it makes mama feel better or daddy. But when we do it and then take services or provide services that are not appropriate for the child, that's the problem. Adrian, you've got a question or a comment?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think a lot of times that because I'm dealing with that now with a parent that is really pushing for her child to be autistic.
Of
And
course.
I don't think she really is, but
Of course not.
she is not showing any signs of being autistic. And I've worked with autistic kids a lot, but
Mhm.
I don't do that part. Of course, the school psychologist is doing all that.
Exactly. Again, perfect example why the school psychologist needs to be the traffic cop on this one, be the good guy
Right.
or the bad guy.
But I
Exactly.
think a lot of it is monetary because she's trying to get that diagnosis so she can get monies. It's outside
Yeah.
of the school. It's
Yeah.
not the school itself. I think that's what it is,
Well, of course.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This whole autism push is a bad thing. It's my point. It's a bad thing. Man, there's no way to make it good. It's not a good thing. All right, let me share my screen. I've got a couple more things and then we'll here's the parent information and resource center for IDA. If you don't know about IDA, you need to study this. That's Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. For exception, that's basically sets up exceptional children. And here's the Resource Center for Parents. You need to give parents this in the manual or this. It has a lot of good things here. 10 basic steps, key terms to know. Privacy. It has FERPA. All about the IEP. I mean, it's got it all right here. This is a great primer for somebody who's going to become an LEA rep. You should spend time with this. It's really good. That link, of course, is under tonight's lesson. Here is the IDA website. If you're, it's got law and policy right here. All the policy documents. If you don't know that, grants and funding. That's what Adrienne was just talking about. There's some money out there for different things for schools, but there's also money for parents. You should spend some time with that. And then lastly, this one right here. Dr. Sane put this together for us, and it's only 27 slides. And this is what every administrator should know when complying with EC policy. He's got FAPE, free and appropriate. He's got all the rules on it. He's got child find. You do realize that you're required to find all the kids that live in your district, whether they're coming to your school or not, whether they're in private school, charter school, or homeschool, to make sure that they've been offered services. That's called child find. It's part of the law. Least restrictive environment, most of you know that. Continuation of alternative placement decisions. Do not hold IEP meetings if key stakeholders cannot. LEA rep should always be present and involved in the decision. That means you got to be scripted, and you should be the one that's participating in the meeting. If the principal and the assistant principal both are in the meeting, one of them should be the LEA rep, and the other one should hush. Don't have two people in there doing that. But whichever one is designated is the one that speaks for the group and should be the one participating, and that should be the one scripting as well. Children in private schools, you got to go find them on child find, parental consent. He has all those things, best practices on referrals, initial evals, evaluation procedures, screening, re-evals, what we were talking about. Got to keep up with your timeline and compliance. If not, you drop off of it. MTSS, how that works with EC, as Liz said, they work hand in hand. Oh, have I bothered to mention, once a kid is in intervention at a certain level, usually level 3, but it can be sooner, they get the same protections as an EC kid. Liz, how do y'all handle that, by the way?
Well, when you say protections, meaning if we say that we're providing intervention for 30 minutes 4 times a week, we have to hold ourselves to that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
or
exactly. When do y'all start that?
So the program that I run, if a student is absent repeatedly, we don't let that affect them. We double up on their intervention on the days that they are there, and we have creative ways to fulfill that time, kind of to mirror what EC does with compensatory time.
Yeah.
If a student is owed service time in EC, especially if they're in the tier 3 process, we don't want them to qualify for EC services because they were absent. So we try and fill that time another way, and we've had to be really creative, and it's been difficult in some situations, but so yeah, same protections.
Yeah. Now, as I said, one difference, and please, Liz, don't hesitate to correct me if I'm wrong here. When a kid is initially in the 90-day process for EC, their protections start on the first day of the 90 days. My understanding is some districts do not extend those protections to intervention kids during the first 30 days when they're just doing anecdotals and they aren't providing services yet. Is that a possibility, or should they, I don't know, I don't really know what protections they would get during that time, other than you're not supposed to disclose, you get the FERPA privacy laws. But I know that some districts are claiming that those intervention kids, until they get to tier 2, when they actually start interventions and not just anecdotals, that they don't get the protections until they get there. What do you think about that? Is that a possible, or?
I think I need more clarification what those protections are.
Well, what I'm saying is what you just outlined is, um, once they start getting services, compensatory time and all that other stuff, you know, privacy, all those things kick in. Least
Before they
restrictive
qualify for EC, before they qualify for EC.
at the first level of intervention, when you're actually tying a first level intervention with these students. At that point, they have all the same rights as an EC kid in terms of their IEP, their compensatory time, everything that they would get if they were in EC, they get at the point when they start getting interventions during MTSS.
I don't think so. I guess if it was they were getting modified assignments or extended time or reduced workload for the most part, if that's something they could get in EC, I'm only at a K2 level, so we do that because they're really little kids anyway, and we're problem solving and we don't want kids in tears, so it might be different. But we don't provide more than what they need. We try and keep it at the lower level and add as we go through the tiers. So usually a tier 1 support would be doing what you're doing with everybody else in the classroom and giving them extra small group time. Tier 2 is they need more targeted time in a small group with other kids needing the same thing, and we collect more data. And then tier 3 is we're problem solving and we look at all components of the child to figure out why are they having a difficult time. But in terms of modifying or accommodations, we might be trying out what they need, but we're not legally responsible for giving it to them because we want the IEP team who's going through the evaluation to look at all the data and see what they're really owed. Because if we give them more than what they actually need, then we're doing a disservice to them and we're not giving them access. Yes. And our biggest priority is to keep them in core instruction as much as possible, because sometimes if we give them more intervention than they need, then they miss out on core and we cause a gap that wasn't already there. And I've seen that a couple of times and I'm like kicking myself because we weren't following the data and what they needed and giving them too much. So I don't know about your question, but maybe not. Maybe not.
Overarching is EC kids have certain protections. They have privacy rights. They have faith. They have all these things that they have that regular ed kids haven't had in the past. The law is very clear on school-based committees for intervention MTSS. When the kid starts getting any kind of intervention, any kind of services, the first level usually is just anecdotals. You're just collecting information. You're observing. That's what anecdotals are. When you put the first level of intervention is basically you have given that kid the same rights as if he were an EC kid. Don't give him too much, least restrictive environment, what Liz was just talking about. Don't pull him out so much that you're hurting him over here in the core. They get basically the same protections. When you start giving them services, not observing them, when you start giving them services, you need to treat them as if they're getting EC services in terms of the protections that you give them and the privacy and all the other components of being an exceptional child. For all intents and purposes, that when the intervention starts, they're in the eyes of the law, they're the same.
So, okay, now that you explain that, because I do a lot of Google file sharing within the teams and the tiers, it's all locked down and we only open up to the people who are directly involved. We don't make an we don't make an announcement to the whole first grade team. Here are your 6 kids in tier 3 interventions. and this is what they're working on. All of that is, we tell them the number, but we don't tell them the names, the
That is
classrooms. It's
correct.
not public knowledge. They don't get to see the kids'
There
growth,
you go.
their charts. Okay. I think I needed that clarification, but yes, we
Yeah.
do. And I get a lot of
Yeah.
requests in Google Drive for me to share a file for a student, and because I keep it so locked down that
Yeah.
only the people that I grant can see it. So
But
yes,
exactly.
thank you.
And
Thank
that's
you for
what-
explaining that.
Yeah, and that's what he's talking about right here. Um, child find fate, free and appropriate. Only the people that's supposed to be there is what we're talking about. Don't let people in. Don't share information with other people. That's what that's what that's the biggie. That's kind of. But Liz just explained it better than me. When you lock all that stuff down, when they get to the point where they're receiving services, same as EC. You got to lock it all down. You don't share it. When you're having meetings, it's only the appropriate people there. The IAP team. Don't let outside people in. It's on one of these here. Parental consent, referrals, the same thing. Initial evals. It's just like their EC kids at that point.
Right.
Manage schedules. MT right here must be compliant with EC policy because it's going to dovetail right into it. See right here, school-based MTSS procedure must be compliant with EC policy because they get the same protections. That's why it says that. Interventions and progress monitoring, it must be the same. As soon as they start getting services, they are all, for all intents and purposes, EC kids. IAP teams should oversee compliance, meeting and beyond. You're the gatekeeper. Don't let people in that don't have standing. Don't just let don't grab some reg ed teacher off the hall that don't teach the kid. Procedural safeguards. Always allow students due process, be proactive. Safeguards, discipline procedure, manifestation termination. Okay, so if a kid gets, I don't care, as long as his butt's not in his regular seat, that's a change in placement. So if it's a in-school suspension or TLC, I don't care what you call it, out of school, in school. If he's not in his seat, he sets in every day, that's a change in placement. 10 days of that, you got to go through manifestation, functional behavior assessment, update the IAP, do a new psychological, do the DEC 5 for. All those things have to be done. Don't be that idiot principal that says, well, I got 10 days, so I'm just going to give them 1 day every time. And they do the same thing. Third time they do the same thing, they go to the front of the line, do the manifestation. They're showing a pattern. That most likely is a manifestation of their disability. That's what a manifestation determination is. Is this behavior a manifestation of their disability? We got to quit punishing them if it is. And so the third time the kid does the same thing, you move them to the front of the line, regardless of how many days you've given them or how many, they don't. Well, we haven't used up our 10 days yet. That paperwork won't kill you, folks. But letting the kid do the same thing over and over again will. And then this is my slide. You see all these nice slides that Dr. Sane did. Here's my slide. Definition and change of placement. Out of school, in school, bus, changing the schedule or classroom, accelerating manifestation due to pattern. Remember that. If his butt's not in his regular seat, it's a change of placement. I don't care what you call it. If he's not sitting at his desk that day, he's somewhere, I don't care if he's somewhere else in your building, it's still a change in placement. See, we got into that in CMS early on in PBIS with that, what they call it, rolling, bouncing, where they were moving from one classroom to the next. That's a change in placement, folks. It counts. Oh, no, it doesn't. You don't get to make that decision. The feds made that decision. See, here's the thing you got to remember about EC, and I'm watching our time here. You don't get to call the shots. The federal government does. They pay for everything. If they say it's a change in placement, guess what? It's a change in placement. This is not one of those things that you have discretion on. I told you that word discretion will get you fired, lose your house. Well, I was using my discretion. I didn't, he was just in the room next door. I don't think that's a change. Don't think you're hurting the team. You don't get to think. If his butt ain't in his seat, that's a change of placement, period, according to the feds.
I have a question.
Yes,
So does that fall on the principal or will that fall on the teachers?
principal.
Okay. Because I have a situation now and I was telling them today, just today, that's a change of placement, guys. Y'all can't just send them to my class.
Exactly.
But that's what they're doing. I'm like,
Well, I mean, if they're not counting and they get caught, they go home. Yeah, the money, there'll have to be restitution on the money, but they'll go home as well.
I just want to make sure it doesn't fall on me.
No, it don't, falls on principal. And I'm gonna tell my principal story just in a minute.
Okay.
Thank you for reminding me. Manifestation of termination, know that, and then here's the fine with EC law, right here it is. So he's put together a wonderful slideshow for you. Quintina, you got one?
Yes, my question is, even with the change of placement, if it's with another EC class, probably next door, that's still considered change of placement, right?
Yeah, their butt in their seat. Their butt in their seat. And that's one of those things where you get into that shuffling deal, rolling and shuffling. So no, that if his butt ain't in his seat, that's a change of placement. And you can't argue that when the feds come.
We had a question with a student that was being disruptive in one of the other classes, his class, and I made the suggestion that he should be back in his class. And then the department chair, the SPED department chair was like, no, he's staying in my class, which I'm not in SPED, so I couldn't really make any kind of decision. But she got upset because I was like, he needs to be back with his teacher.
Yeah.
And that's a change of
If you change his placement to that teacher, then everything's good.
not
On his
documented.
paperwork. And Liz could, Liz had her hand up there. I mean, Adrian could talk about that, but if you change a kid's placement from this room to that room, then that's his placement, then everything's fine. If you go through that and his IEP team meets and updates his IEP, that's fine. But if his IEP says he's over here getting this, if he ain't over there getting that, then you're out of compliance. That's a change in placement. I don't care if it is another EC teacher, but again, he's supposed to be in that room getting that thing. If not, just convene the IEP and say, we're going to move him over here to this room. He gets it over here. We make that paperwork change and off we go.
The only thing is, even though there's an IE, because we had a special review for this kid, there's no data to back up why he should be doing that. All that stuff has to
There
be.
you go.
Yeah, there has to be something to say this is the reason why we're
To
doing
convene
it.
the IEP meeting. That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
There
It's
has to
not
be a
discretion,
compelling
like you
reason.
said.
You can't just
You
say
can't just say that's what I want.
Yeah. That's part of the rights they have. You can't just jerk them around because you want to. There would have to be a compelling reason, and you'd have to bring anecdotal information to the IEP meeting that says he's better off over here for these reasons. We've observed this over this amount of time. We want to change his placement over here. You can't just say we're changing his placement. You have to go have an IEP meeting, and there has to be a compelling, I believe the law says, compelling reason that you would change their placement.
Yeah.
I
I was asking him, what is he going to be doing in my class? You guys have to let me know. I mean, he's just going to come sit. I mean,
exactly. I need a teacher assistant. I'm not sure he's it or not. I mean, what's he going to be doing while he's sitting here with me?
Right.
That's the whole notion of rerouting it through the IEP, where you make sure that you rewrite the goals or whatever that kid needs. I mean, you can't just say, well, I'm moving him from Quintina's classroom to Liz, or from Liz to Adrian, and that's going to fix his problem. Wait, what? What about the move fixes his problem? It's not about where he is, it's what you're doing with it. And so that's the notion of a placement is if you've moved, if his butt ain't in his seat, he's not getting what he's supposed to be getting. Period. That's the whole notion. He got to be in the same place at the same time. Now, if you say, well, this person over here is going to deliver that, then why do we have two people delivering the same thing? That's the next question that you get asked. Why are we doing this? These kids need this that are in that room. These kids need that. Are you providing both over here in this room? Well, no. I mean, y'all understand, and I have to, full disclosure right in there. Is my wife of soon to be 40 years this summer. And I love her better than my next breath. But now, she really appreciates it when I remind her that I'm just one man and I can only be in one place at one time. There's a time-based continuum in physics. And the notion here being, are you duplicating services? No. These kids are getting this over here. Well, then, the kid can only be in one place at one time and get one thing. He can get this over here. Is that what his IEP says? Well, yeah. Well, then why is he over here? Well, he can get the same thing. Is he getting the same thing? No. That would be duplicating services. We don't do that. You get yourself in a bigger trouble trying to make the argument that just, that he can get the same thing whichever room that he goes to. Really? I don't think that's the way it works. If that's true, then we're not providing adequate services for any of our kids. If that's the case. Again, time-space continuum. You're going to be in one place at one time. The reason why you're there at that time is to get that thing. If you're not there, we don't offer that thing in another place. That kid's got to be at that time at that place. That's just how it works. And if you start trying to argue that we were providing the same service in multiple locations, that won't go well for you. So it's very simple, button seat. It's a little graphic, but I can't be any clearer than that. Anything where that kid's not sitting in his regular seat today, he is not, that is not his placement. His placement has to be changed, and that's you have to count that as one of his 10 days. Period. And if you interpret it any other way, you'll lose your job when the feds catch you, and they will. They will catch you. So my final story for tonight. 2014, the week before school opened in Charlotte, 11 principals were dismissed. 11 principals. Why were 11 principals dismissed the week before school? Because what we're talking about tonight, they weren't observing the 10-day. They were only counting out of school suspension, and they were doing, one day at a time kind of thing. That was the first thing. And the second they'd have parents in and basically say to a parent, we're going to put your kid out of school for an extended period of time unless you request that they get EC tested. And they were testing them later that day or the next day, basically blackmailing parents into. They were putting kids out for longer than they were supposed to, not counting the days appropriately. And then when that came out, then they found out that in order to try to cover that up, they were asking, they were trying to force parents into having their kids tested immediately to cover up for them having them not being in compliance, or EC kids not being served and being put out that were already placed. They were doing the dirty on both ends. Trying to force kids to get tested, and the ones that are in it, they were manipulating their days on both ends. And the problem with it was racially and gender identifiable. Guess what? Guess who they were doing this to 99% of the time? That would be black males. They were manipulating their days out of the building, out of placement, not bud and seat on one end, and they were forcing parents to have them tested on the other, to try to get them into EC to get them off the testing rolls. And then once they were in EC, they were putting them out regularly and not counting the days, to varying degrees at 11 schools, 11 principals. Bye. You know, I could tell you individual cases over the years, but that was the biggest house cleaning was 11 at one time. You can go back and look it up in the archives of the Charlotte Observer, 2014. So that's what we're talking about here is you need to behave yourself here. You need to do the right thing. EC is tough. There's a lot of laws to know. There's a lot of procedures. MTSS, I appreciate Liz so much. It's made, it's made it even more complicated. And that Liz has to know MTSS and EC, which is a lot. But, if we're doing intervention, if we're doing EC services, and you're going to be the LEA rep, you got to learn all this stuff. Again, Dr. Sane's slideshow is a general primer. And then, as I said, those others, you can go back and dig down deeper into them. If you don't know the difference between mainstreaming and inclusion, there's a good one there for that. I've spent 45 minutes on it tonight, and I haven't even scratched the surface. I mean, you could spend 45 days. And I would spend a lot of time on that because you'll be asked some of these questions in AP interviews. You'll be asked about these kinds of things. Do you know this stuff well enough that you could be the LEA rep? Because you're going to be, unfortunately. All right. Anybody have anything else for the good of the group tonight? EC's tough, folks. There's a lot to it. It's a big pill to swallow. I'd be spending some time on these different resources that I pulled together under tonight. I want to talk about case study last. We'll get to Liz's question first, and I'm going to talk about our last case study.
No, my question was about the case study, but
Okay.
go ahead, and then afterwards, Team 6 wants to stay on with you for a minute about the
Okay.
case study. Thank
All
you.
right. All righty then.
I mean,
Case
I have a
study 4.
question. Can we go out of order on our discussion board posts?
Yeah.
Okay. Because sometimes there's some stuff that conversations I may have had that correlate to a different post. And I'm like,
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I have them. They just say discussion board. They're not. You don't have to do them week by week. You do them when it's most convenient. All right.
Yeah.
So this case is about your personal or political truth versus objective truth in the law. This is one of those where it doesn't matter how you feel about this case one way or the other. Your job as a school principal to uphold the law. In this case is we got parents coming in and that are bullying, making inappropriate comments. We got parents who want to talk about somebody else's child. Can you talk about other people's children? No. We've got people who are threatening to harm kids, heckler's veto. People say, what in the world is heckler? It's the law, the loudest and stupidest gets their way. And so heckler's veto is if, me and Jasmine are beefing. And I don't like what she's doing. And I say, if you show up at the dance tonight, I'm going to punch you in the nose. I don't like how I don't like your social media presence. And if you show up at the dance tonight, I'm going to punch you in the nose. And then Liz is the administrator in charge. No, Josh is. Where's Josh? He's like me. He's kind of dumb. No, I'm just teasing. Josh says, instead of saying to me, you can't threaten Jasmine. I'm punishing you for your threat, and if you fall through with that, I'm really going to get you. What he does is he goes to Jasmine and says, you better not show up tonight because he might punch you in the nose. He's punishing the victim. That's what heckler's veto is. Is that because threats have been made, you tell that person now you can't come, or I'm doing it for your own good. I am taking away your rights and privileges for your own good, which is kind of.
If I were you, I wouldn't do that because somebody else is going to do X, Y, Z to you.
Exactly. And so that's what happens in this case is the principal calls Jimmy and Willie in and says, y'all can't come to the prom because they're going to beat you up. Well, then go get them for threatening to beat me up. And so regardless of how you feel about the LGBTQ community, your job is to uphold the law. There's several violations of the law here. Do you let Jimmy and Willie come to the prom? What is the underlying problem here? Remember antecedent behaviors? Do you remember antecedent behaviors? The little things become the big things. Well, they let Jimmy and Willie do all these excessive displays of affection all over the school and got out in the community and got everybody, got all the conservative bigots all cranked up over it. Decline of Western civilization because Jimmy and Willie are kissing. Now, the truth of the matter is we shouldn't have boys and girls kissing, regardless of gender. It got out of control here and inflamed the community. The little things became the big things, as we talked about. They didn't do anything to Jimmy and Willie until it was too late. So we've got inaction, and we got principal talking about other people's kids. We got parents coming in and bullying and cyberbullying and making threats. We've got a lot of bad stuff here. Now the notion here is can you wade through all this stuff and do the right thing regardless of your personal feelings? And see, this is more a political tribe kind of thing. My tribe don't like them people. And, I've got to keep, I've got to make sure that I stay in favor with my tribe. But understanding it's not about your tribe. It's not about your personal truth or your political truth. It's about objective truth. What is the law? Do LGBTQ people have rights? Are they a protected class? And see, now that's kind of the last thing here, is you got to understand this case is really not about LGBTQ. It's just for the shock value. This is about any protected class of students in your building, the protections that any of them would have. So that's what you've got to understand. This is about any of your federal protected classes. And by federal law, they are a protected class, just like EC is, just like 504 is, just like Title I is, ESL is. That's why we identify those special populations in task 1 and do an audit of what's in our building and what they're supposed to get, because guess what? They're a federally protected class. That's why I sit and name them about a dozen times the first 3 or 4 weeks. They are a federally protected class. When we get to this case, you say, what's this got to do with EC kids, Dale? Well, they have the same protections under the federal law as EC kids do, because they're a federally protected class. LGBTQ is. And even though, like South Carolina doesn't have a hate speech law, that doesn't mean that you could do this, because again, federal law covers these folks. They're a protected class. While state law doesn't, federal law does. And which trumps which? Federal or state law? Federal law trumps state law. And so here are your questions right here. And so, you got to understand this case is about federally protected classes. It's also about principals in action, letting things get out of control. And, and inflaming the community by letting things get out of control. Now, you can't go down the hall and get a hose pipe and separate Jimmy and Willie if you don't do it to the boys and girls. And we shouldn't be seeing this out of any, regardless of gender. You let it get out of control and see where you are now. Now you got parents over here marching on the school, and especially the dumbest ones. But you can't let the loudest ones and dumbest and the most threatening ones get their way. That's heckler's veto. All right. So that's the case. Read it carefully, understand all the laws that go along with it. And here are your directions. They're right there. And so there you go. All right. Anybody else have anything other than Team 6? All right. I've enjoyed it. We'll see you next week. I'm looking forward to your presentations, as I always do. Then we get a week off. Good for y'all. And I'll miss you all week long. Bye-bye. All right. Team 6, what's in the works tonight?
So I am not going to be in the country next week for a case study. So
Good
I
for
reached
you.
out to Jet. I know it's our spring break and it doesn't align with most other people. So I reached out to my all-star team, Quintina and Jasmine, over the weekend and let them know that I wasn't going to be there. So we have already prepared our presentation and we've met. And we want to know, how do you handle this if one team member's not there? We are,
We just continue
One.
on with the other two, and you do your part to get
Okay.
it ready to go, and off we go. This is how
Okay.
life works.
okay, because we are prepared to present to you
There
if
you
you
go.
want it tonight, if you want it tomorrow, or if you, tomorrow, Jasmine, you need a break. You gotta put your kids to bed.
Or we
Tomorrow.
can do it tomorrow.
No, you don't.
Okay.
Y'all don't have to do that. The collaboration piece is
Yes.
what's important, and getting it ready and understanding that sometimes when collaborative teams work together, many times one or more of the collaborative partners are not at the final presentation. I mean, I work with doctoral students all the time, but I can't go to all of them's final defense unless I'm their chair. But I collaborate with them. That's Kendra needing me to I'm gonna collaborate with her Thursday night, but now I'm not gonna be at her defense. I mean, I collaborate with her to produce her product, but
Well, my two teammates have been all-stars because
y'all have
they
all been
jumped up.
all-stars, and I tell you that every week. Y'all have all been. I'm married to a Tina, by the way, so y'all have all been all-stars.
Well,
Um,
they
Yeah, I'm
they
ready.
knew.
We can go ahead and knock it out, Liz. If you want to.
Can we knock it out, Dr. Lamb?
That's
We
fine
ready.
with
And
me.
we are more excited because we were a little nervous if you were going to share something tonight that was going to completely alter what we were going to
Yeah.
say. But we hit the nail on the head, and I
Did
got to
it, yeah.
shout out to my team. So, Dr. Lamb, do you mind? Oh wait, I can share my. I think I can do it. We're doing it.
All right, pull it up. Let's roll. We got
Here
it.
we go.
Roll on. I'm still with you. Let me stop mine so y'all can share.
All
I
right.
think I'll start us off, but this was a really good case study because, like you said, the political climate right now is this.
Yeah.
This is reality. This is happening in a lot of our schools. It's a hot ticket item. It's a button pusher. Like you said, we see our communities getting riled up, and it doesn't take much for this kind of situation to happen. And it's everywhere. And I don't know if we are clearly handling it like it's supposed to be handled, but more so than that, because I mean, this brings into the ethical and the moral component, but the legalities, like you said, was what we really dug into with our course
Yeah.
tech about what was supposed to have happened and what wasn't supposed to have happened, and what do you do with that. So we really explored this a little bit, and I think I have a couple more questions, but we'll present first and then we'll go into it.
Okay.
Yeah, we enjoyed this one. We had some good conversation. So I will provide a case study overview, and we just pulled out the most important facts. It was that the Hudsons collaborated and got the signatures of 100 other parents wanting the principal to take action on those two students because of the public display of affection. The parents threatened that inaction would lead to a parent boycott. And then they cited it was abomination, mockery of their religious beliefs. The students were also collecting and urging the principal to cancel prom if they were allowed to attend. We looked at the wording very carefully of the case study. Did they mean if either of them attended at all, if they attended separately or together? We inferred it was together. The principal cited that the boys or the men's plan to attend prom was disruptive to the learning process and could potentially put them in harm's way. That was the principal feeling persuaded or kind of an outside threat and trying to make it seem like you mentioned the heckler's veto, that you don't like what others are doing, so you punish the victim and take away the rights of the victim. So the men and their parents cited the principal's request was an infringement on the First Amendment rights of free speech. We appreciated hearing the men's plan for a sort of trifecta approach to educating their school and the community for acceptance. And ultimately, from the case study overview, the principal requested that they postpone their plans pending further study. And I hope that that principal's further study was to look at the legality of the request of the parents, the students, and then what was required to them as a principal.
But it did not feel that way from the way the case study read to me, that the principal was leaning that way. It looked like the principal was stalling and trying to
Yes.
smooth things over.
And
Well,
that
she
was
So-
wanted, she wanted to wait till after school was out to be gay, as if it was, you know.
The principal didn't want to handle the issue and wanted just to keep things quiet
Like
and
they had a
keep the
bad cold.
That was one
Yeah.
of our question. Did we feel as if the principal was being bullied and harassed? That was one of the things that we couldn't determine from the case study, but I felt that she was being harassed and
Yeah,
bullied
it
by
was a bail
parents.
threat. And in the court of law, that would be considered a bail threat. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Christina, because you definitely brought that up with us. So then we looked at the questions, the 4 questions that the case study proposed, and the first one was, would you consider Mary Lou's comments a veiled threat? And we said yes, because it violates the First Amendment rights of the students, and she kind of went around the bush, like that's the heckler's veto again, but she wanted to use the threats that others were making as a justification as to why the behavior shouldn't be tolerated or isn't acceptable or whatever, what have you, instead of addressing the threats that were actually being made to the students. So
Exactly.
yeah, so she was compliant with what was happening. We also looked at oh wait, go into
Move to the
sorry,
next slide.
yeah, and then we can just come back to the questions. A veiled threat. So we wanted to get, we were a little concerned about exactly who was being threatened, because it seemed like at this point there's a lot of threat type language being pushed on everybody. And so we said a veiled threat is a threat that isn't directly stated, but it's implied. It's using disguised language or euphemisms. We said that we noted that she met with the boys' parents twice to try to persuade them to pause the relationship until after graduation. She cited that it would be its disruption to the learning environment and to avoid potential harm, which we said was a fear tactic, because you should even be allowing potential harm to even come into the conversation. In that regard, there should be some sort of behavior consequences for that. But then we also found in the course text that all school officials must recognize that all students, regardless of their sexual orientation, they enjoy the same rights as others, which include the right to be free from harassment and discrimination. And like you said, if she wasn't cracking down on public displays of affection between girls and boys, then it's still somewhat unwarranted, because that was where we should have started with that conversation in regard to,
Yeah, and
we don't allow
remembering,
any of that at school. So let's start there.
yeah, and remembering that we can't be arbitrary. Remember, our 2 standards this semester are arbitrary and capricious. When we're meting out, when we're assigning disciplinary consequences, they can be neither arbitrary nor capricious. If she only stopped, she didn't stop anybody, which is, negligence, failure, had a duty to act and didn't.
Right.
But what if she just told Jimmy and Willie that they couldn't hold hands or kiss, but let the boys and girls do that? That would be arbitrary. Okay, so she wasn't arbitrary because she didn't enforce the rules on anybody, as far as we know. So that's the first problem, is she was negligent. That's nonfeasance, had a duty to act and didn't, on stopping this behavior that got out of control. The little things become the big things when you don't act. That's the whole notion behind nonfeasance. People think, well, if I don't do anything, I can't be in the wrong. Yes, you can. If you had a duty to act, you're supposed to act. That's the biggest mental leap that potential or aspiring or emerging leaders have to make, is that just because you didn't do anything didn't mean you didn't do something wrong. You had a duty to act, and if you didn't, they're going to get you for negligence on the grounds of nonfeasance. Now, if she was only enforcing the rules on the gay kids and not the straight kids, that would be arbitrary. Now, the point where capricious comes in is she's talking about banning these kids from prom, which is way more punishment than a simple inappropriate display of public affection, PDA as we call it, that the state says you can't do. It doesn't carry a suspension from the prom. I mean, that's way too much punishment for the crime. So she's guilty of, she's guilty of being capricious, maybe not arbitrary, but she does hit the capricious standard. And she also hits the standard of negligence under the non-feasance statute. She had a duty to act to protect these kids, and she didn't. She also violated their FERPA rights. She talked to other parents about them. Other parents made bullying and threatening statements in her presence and didn't call communicating threats. That's a law violation. She was supposed to inform the resource officer of that.
And Title isn't she? We forgot to add this, but shouldn't she have also included the Title IX coordinator because of the situation? Okay, I thought about it.
You got that written down, Jasmine?
I
So you
am.
can add that?
Yep.
And remembering under Title IX, under the latest revision in 2001, she cannot be the one that investigates and then assigns the outcome either. She's violated Title IX law in that she's the one that's handling the case, and she's the one that's deciding that they can't come to the prom.
Should she be in a judge and a jury?
That is correct. That's what
And
Title IX says you cannot do.
so there was she should have pulled in quite a few outside
Absolutely.
people in this situation.
She had a duty to act and didn't to start with, and then she had further duties to act and didn't. And then when she did act, she did the wrong thing. Again, but she's, driven by her own personal belief system rather than by the law. And so about everything that we've talked about that you can't do in discipline this semester, she did. That's why I used this case study. And to Jasmine, to your point, about, I don't know, 5 or 8 years ago, somewhere in that range, somebody said to me, you need a new case study here. So this one's been decided. And I said, I don't think so. I don't think so. The world changed in January of 2017 with that inauguration. All of a sudden, stuff that I thought was decided, like abortion and rights and other things, all of a sudden aren't decided anymore. So this one is more relevant today than it was 5 years ago or 8 years ago, to your point. But the whole notion here is we're looking at the principal's behavior in this. We looked at the teacher's behavior in the first one, principals in the superintendent in the second one. Now we're looking at the principal's behavior. And the principal is failing on all the standards that we've talked about this semester. Every one of them. She's played every note. She's hit every wrong note that you could hit. She's done negligence. She's done misfeasance. She's violated Title IX, judge, jury. She's threatened kids. She's been completely capricious in her meting out of punishment. I mean, she's violated FERPA rights. She's done everything wrong that you could do as a principal. Best I can figure is I always say the only thing that she didn't do was wet her pants. It's the only thing I can figure out what she didn't do wrong. I mean, she did everything.
It's terrifying to think that when you read this before being a student in this program, you would think like, oh, she's listening to all the sides. She's trying to just kind of keep everybody quiet, trying to give everybody a smooth end of the year. And most people would look at that if they weren't fully invested in the issue that it brings up. You'd be like, oh, she did everything. She can calm down. But then now that we're on the other side, and I feel like many people, if they weren't really knowledgeable on the law part as we're learning, would make the same decisions and moves that she is. And that's terrifying now.
Because they're operating on their personal or their political truth rather than objective truth, which is the law.
Or by the fear of the public opinion.
Exactly.
I see that a lot, is that, well, this is a micro political issue, so I'm going to make this decision. And I hear that in my own building, and I'm like, yeah, but that's so wrong.
Yes.
And then the numbers also play into me, like, because of the sheer amount of parents on this side, and you've only got in support of what, a small family. that weighs on what you feel like you have to do
Exactly.
for all of these people, even though it's not right, but that pressure of feeling like you've got to make
Yeah.
the big group happy. The big loud group has to be made
Yeah,
happy.
and just like all those people up in Kentucky that were cheering on the clerk of court who refused to give the gay people a marriage license, you go
Mhm.
girl, and they were just they were boosting her up, and the hype man was out and all that until she went to court, and then they all disappeared, and she
Yeah.
lost she lost everything in court. She lost the case, and so. Um, Yeah, there's not safety in numbers if you're violating the law. Nobody can give you permission to break the law. And I like the term that Liz used there, micro-political climate here. That's your political truth. You understand that politically it'd be best if I be on this side of this because there's the numbers, but you have no protection under the law. They hired you to uphold the law and policy, period.
My
Yeah.
principal told me 2 months ago that he was making a decision to hire somebody, and he used the word, "This is a micro political thing you're going to learn about." And I was like, well, I still don't support it. And this is how, but he used that term. So he was aware and he made that decision. I was like, well, okay, learn what not to do.
Yeah. And as I've said before, that what's really good, and one of the things that we I try to get folks to move on from is I'm going to tell you what you're supposed to do, what should be. I can't help what is, and sometimes the bad example is a better teacher than a good example. I've made that point before. But in a case like this, one of the things we have to be really careful of is we look at being gay as if they're vaping or going to a tanning booth, like they can choose to do or not to do that. That's a violation of their rights as well. To tell somebody, wait till school's out and then you can be gay. Well, that's not the way it works. As if, they're choosing to vape or smoke or go to a tanning booth or something like that, something that's harmful and they shouldn't really do it. You can't categorize this as that. That's pejorative as well. We have to be careful that we don't make those kinds of personal truth judgments on people's behavior.
Or 100 parents signing a petition.
Yeah,
You can't be
exactly.
threatened by that. And you have to be really secure in who you are and what you
Mhm.
are supposed to do and not be persuaded.
And that came to your question number 3, because it was like, how should Mary Lou actually went to the Hudsons?
Mhm.
I was like adamant she should have went off and said, I'm not listening to you guys. This is
Exactly. That's when
I
you
have-
invite them to leave, or you invite the resource officer in and share
they
your
sent it-
threats with this policeman.
But they sent it, and that's what the question was, because they sent it to her through an email, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
you've got it
And
documented.
yep.
You've
Yeah.
got it, and I would forward that right on to the resource officer. But no, I would not meet with these people.
Mm-mm.
And
Because
if I
that
did meet with
constitutes
them, as
safety.
soon as they made the first threat or said some of those, I'm out. You're out. This meeting is over. I can't be a party to that. You're violating bullying statutes in this state. I can't be a party to that. And so,
Quintina, you were spot on with that question.
yeah.
Anything you want to
Yeah.
add? You can see it. We cited,
Yeah,
I mean,
'cause
we
I
tore
wouldn't
up our
repeat it.
book.
But
There was
bullet
some good
number 2
section.
there. Bullet number 2. That's what I was referring to before. They have the same protections as EC kids or Title IX, Title I kids or ESL or any of those. They are a protected class, and it says so right there. And so this case can be extrapolated to any federally protected group in your building. We get get these same rights. And so, I've had parents go to schools and say, we don't want them EC kids here. Well, you can't entertain that, or we want this or don't want that. Or, we don't like having them kids. We don't want an ESL program at our school. No,
We don't have the choice on which children we get. We don't
That is
have-
correct.
A
We-
basic sound education.
That's correct for every child that shows up at our door.
And
We
then
have-
I'll jump in again with our text.
We have to be a champion for children, not for parents or teachers.
Political and religious viewpoints should not shield or protect those who use speech to attack others. And it says
That's
that in our
correct.
text, and people should not allow themselves to be an additional weapon against any group of students. And she allowed herself
Right.
to be an additional weapon.
That is correct. That's why I said everything that we've talked about this semester, every standard that we've talked about that you have to uphold or you can't violate, she either didn't uphold or violate. Every one. And so that's why this case is so good in that it hits on pretty much everything that we've talked about. And we could extrapolate this to any other federally protected class as well. It's ubiquitous. It's a primer on what not to do.
Last
And we-
question.
should-
Go, Quincy,
I
and then
go.
you go.
Should Mary Lou allow Jimmy and Willie to attend the prom as a couple? Yes, she don't have any other choice. I mean, I don't think that her feelings or the community feelings have anything to do with if they came together or apart. They all are able to attend any school function, the same rights, federal law. And then she went as far as adding the West Side Community School Board of Education versus Mergen's 1990. The Equal Access Act requires schools to treat students club and address LGBTQ and issues the same as other student groups. Equal access, same access to school facilities and other student groups to enjoy.
Yeah, she shut them down immediately. Well, and referred them to, maybe we'll come back to it when they discuss bringing up the club, but that also was against, she was legally wrong.
Right.
And it will go on if you want, but I think what we realized when we were preparing for this, we were all over our textbook. We were like on our FaceTime group call, we were calling out page number, and we're flipping our books, and we found so many evidences throughout the book of court cases, of legal laws that were relevant to this case. We were just trying to fit it all in, but we realized that there were so many pieces of this that were not legal or following the law. We referenced Tinker versus Des Moines.
Yep, that's your standard. That is the seminal case that all the other rulings and laws emanate from, the one that says kids get due process. Now, there's a lot of other more specific and more narrower decisions on specific, but the overarching, the umbrella one is Tinker versus Des Moines. That is correct.
And the families that petitioned against the men are not protected, and they weren't legally justified.
Right.
We also touched on cyberbullying. I mean, we could go on. I mean, we eventually were like, okay, let's just stop and just hear what Dr. Lim has to say in class tonight. But after you gave your overview, we felt like we captured it well enough to kind of share with you. And I didn't want to leave my two teammates hanging, because we are a small and mighty team, as I call
Y'all
us.
are mighty.
We really are. I lucked out. We all lucked out.
Yep.
And then we just kind of concluded that she was wrong as can be, and that if districts encourage, tolerate, ignore, or fail to adequately address harassment, it's going to violate somebody's civil rights. It's violating
That's exactly
civil
right.
And
Equal
so
protection
whether
under the law,
bullying,
14th Amendment. Yep.
cyberbullying, however, all of that, she was wrong, and she had a duty to act, and she did not.
Yeah, she hit every note wrong that we've talked about the entire semester. And so here's the culminating question that I generally ask. And it's a small part of the case. They want to form a LGBTQ club. As any other extracurricular club, they have to have a faculty sponsor. If you don't have a faculty member that volunteers to be their sponsor, would you as principal assign somebody to do that? And could you
Ooh,
do
that's a good question. I'd say you
I was
should,
yes.
because
Because,
the
and I think
student
if we go
demographics
back,
are asking or need it.
on this slide, I'll go back. It says in the West Side Community School Board of Education, Equal Access Act requires schools to treat student clubs that address LGBTQ issues the same as other student groups. Equal access means
She can
same
assign.
access to school facilities. So if that means the principal needs to assign a staff member, then I would say yes.
You are correct.
Yeah.
Under the law, it says clearly, any other duties assigned by the principal.
Principal. Yep. And that's under our contract.
Thank
is.
you, Tina. That's exactly right. It's in your contract. And it says that language specifically.
Mhm.
And any other duties assigned by the principal. So yes, principal, you can assign somebody to be their faculty sponsor. And yes, principal, you should assign somebody to do that. It's kind of like I talk about extra, the supervision schedule. This is part of the supervision schedule. You can't leave it as a sign up. You need to assign people to be at certain events covering, or that you got adequate supervision. Well, we understand that when we got a ball game or we got a talent show or something like that, that we can't just let teachers sign up and then if they don't show up, it's okay. We have to assign them. We don't put a sign up sheet. Well, it's the same thing for clubs and organizations. If they don't have somebody, we have to assign somebody. Otherwise, we're abridging the student's right to do that. And the law is clear that we have a responsibility and any other duties assigned by the principal. Tina says it's in your contract, says so. And we have to look at clubs like any other event on the supervision schedule. Remember, duty rosters during the day, bus duty, car rider duty, lunch duty, hall duty, those things. Supervision schedule is after school activities. Having enough people at the ball game, having enough people at the step show, talent show, having enough people to cover all student organizations. That's part of the supervision schedule. So yes, you have the legal responsibility to assign somebody, and yes, you should assign somebody in your supervision schedule. That's a legal requirement of you as a principal to do that. Children must have adequate supervision at both in school and out of school sponsored functions, period. Not open for debate. Now, I have a lot of people say, oh, well, that one would die on the vine because nobody would volunteer to do that and we just won't get them anybody and it'll go away. No, it won't. If you do that, then again, you have violated their equal access.
Yeah.
You have to assign somebody. If nobody volunteers, that's fine. Then you assign somebody. That is your legal, again, you have a duty to act according to the law. And that duty to act includes assigning somebody to be their sponsor. That's the part that, for some people, that one's the bridge too far. No, that's part of the law. You got to do it. Well, that person will
I
be
guess
mad at me. Well, that comes
to
with
be a
the territory.
principal, you have to be really confident in not being a popularity contest or looking for
Exactly.
approval. And
You go back to Hertzberg, when we
Yeah.
talk about theoretical frameworks and conceptual frameworks for doctoral work, Hertzberg's my favorite, but Hertzberg would tell you, and I have to tell y'all, as a principal, your job is not to be a satisfier. You can't be a satisfier. You can be a dissatisfier if you do bad things, but your job is not to be a satisfier. That is not in your job description. Your job description is to carry out all laws and policies of the federal, state, and local school board, period. That sometimes doesn't make you popular, but your job is not to be popular. Your number one job is to follow all the laws and policies of the federal, state, and local school board, period. And so, as I've told you, at some point in your interview process to become an administrator, they'll slip that question in on you. If there was something in your district that you didn't agree with, would you do it anyway? And the answer is yes, because that's
If
exactly
it's
what
legal,
yeah.
if
I mean,
it's legal.
that's what I'm talking about. You know,
Yeah.
there's a law or policy that you don't agree with. Would you enforce it? Yes.
Yes.
Because in the end, that's what you do. You know what the number one thing when I'll be in Raleigh in the morning. I got to leave in about 7 hours to go to Raleigh. And I'm on the Principal Standards Commission for North Carolina. I represent the private schools, the MSA programs from all 17 private schools, and then the lady from Chapel Hill represents the public schools. But we'll be in Raleigh tomorrow. And one of the things that we talk about when I'm in that collaborative group or the collaborative group, our collaborative group that includes superintendents for the college and for what's called EPPs, education program providers. The number one thing that superintendents tell us that we need to make sure that we do in preparation programs is teach people to follow directions and follow the rules. That's their number one. Is that they have too many folks that they hire that think they have discretion and don't follow the rules, won't follow the rules, do what they want to do, don't follow the directions the first time, that don't want to implement with fidelity so things can be measured. They want to do it their way, or they have a better idea. They think that they know better or do better, or they want to decide which rules and policies to enforce, and not based on pressure from the community and those kinds of things. And what they tell me all the time, because they know I teach law, is that we stay in court all the time because principals don't do what they're supposed to. That's the number one. And for that reason, collaboratively, NCDPI, legislature, the Principals Association in North Carolina sponsor a legal forum every other fall in September at the McKimmon Center in Raleigh, which is the extension building for NC State University. They bring Richard Schwartz and Associates. He brings 12 attorneys, and we spend 3 days going through all this every other year. The latest legal updates, and especially on what we're talking about here. EC is a biggie. Always have a whole section on it. LGBTQ, all these hot button issue kind of things, religious freedoms, all that kind of stuff. They spend that, and what superintendents tell me is it doesn't matter. We send all of our principals every year. It's hard to get a seat there. If I wasn't on the commission, I wouldn't even get a seat. But he said, we just don't understand. We send them to all this stuff. We go through this stuff regularly. We do updates. We do principals in service. It's all about following laws and policies. And then we stay in court all the time because they won't. Because of cases like this where it's not popular in that community and the principal thinks that their job is to be popular. They're not. You have to follow the law and policy, period. Even in cases like this. And then you don't have to go as overboard as this lady did the other way. But we got to get out of this notion that if we don't do anything, we can't get in trouble. You have a duty to act, a responsibility. And this notion of we'll just let this die on the vine. We won't do this LGBTQ club. We won't. No, you have a legal responsibility to assign somebody to supervise that after school activity, just like you would if it was a ball game. And you have to understand that you can't get out of it. You can't. You can't make errors of omission. We just didn't get around to that. I won't help you in court. You had a duty here. You got to fulfill that, and it won't always be easy. And sometimes it won't be the popular thing at all, but we don't do the popular thing. We do the legal thing always. Nobody, no matter how many numbers there are, nobody can give us permission to break the law. Because we're the one that's held accountable for that in the end. And that's why I said I love what it says in the DPI manual on disciplinary data entry. Don't matter who does it, principals, you're responsible for it. And if we catch you cheating, it comes back to you. And so That's an excellent job on that one. You did great. You cited the right things. I'm very pleased with your work. We're progressing. We're getting better. And that's what we do. We start out, it's not as good, but it gets better. And I can't wait till the last one, when, the last one touches everything that we did this semester. Both of our evidences, all the laws, everything comes home in the last one.
It's the big kahuna, apparently.
It is. Well, it gives us the opportunity to do that long term, like we talk about in the skip, where we do an event at our school.
Mhm.
The event that I would do would be an EC night, where we talk about what, and we inform parents on what the inclusion model is. I mean, many of the parents are coming in and complaining because they don't know they're used to the old mainstreaming. And now that you're doing inclusion, it sounds familiar. This is a hot topic even today. And because parents don't know, well, we had the opportunity to connect with these people in some short-term way, technology, website, social media, get them in, and then we sit down and we do an EC night. It has that, it has a lot, it has everything that we touch.
Dr. Lamb, what I have noticed within my school, that many of the teachers weren't getting along when they do inclusion. It would either be the EC teacher and then the regular ed teacher. She don't want the EC teacher come in and take over her classroom, or the EC teacher come in and not do anything and just allow the regular ed teacher just to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, it's not easy. It requires a large degree of collaboration that teachers aren't used to doing. They're used to going to their room and closing their door and doing what they want to do. But we can't take the risk if they're going to anymore that they're doing the right things. I mean, but you're exactly right. One of the big sticking points in the inclusion model is the adults.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly right. And so you have to find teams that work together.
We hit a ratio because our school has grown so much that an inclusion classroom is 40% EC, 60 gen ed, which they're all gen ed to begin with. Well, that's not enough gen ed kids to help those EC kids. So even our gen ed kids are struggling because it's not going well.
Too many.
And I keep trying to find a legal or a recommendation from DPI of an easy inclusion should be no more than 1/3 or half.
20%.
What is it, 20?
It's just a recommendation though.
That nobody's, okay, well, we're way beyond that. And some we're at 50.
It can't be 40%.
Yeah, well, I'm not the principal.
And what's going on there is other teachers complain or don't get along, and so you try to find the one that can get along with the EC people. And
now they're gone. They're going to leave at the end of this year. All of them, probably.
Yeah.
I would too.
You can't just punish people like that, and that's what you're doing.
Let me ask you a question, Liz. This is if you have MTSS and then you have your intervention coordinators that comes in, because I think they hire out these interventionists that comes in with the inclusion teacher. So if you're in a classroom, you have your inclusion teacher and your MTSS intervention person. Is that like is it legal for them to give them that intervention, that tier 1 and 2 instruction like that?
So we layer, like you could have tier 1, you can have tier 1 and 2, you can have tier 1, 2, and 3. And now we just recently got guidance that you can, if a student is at tier 3 and they also qualify for EC services from an EC teacher, it doesn't mean we have to take away what was helping at tier 3, as long as they can continue to get the core instruction and that gap doesn't widen. Most cases, depending on the intervention model, you don't have enough time in the day to give all of those layers of intervention. And so you're going to start with prioritizing your EC time and then your tier 3 time if it doesn't take away from their core time. My school doesn't have, I am MTSS. I'm also, for most of the kids, interventionist. and I'm the coach and I'm all those things, but we are a high performing, high income area. So we don't get federal funding and we don't have extra people. So we don't have an interventionist. It's all on the teachers in the classroom during an intervention block. But as long as it doesn't take away from their core, layering from the top down, once they become EC, is okay. And then if they're not EC, you start from the bottom up until you find the max amount of support they need to get the growth.
You know, this is a kind of learning as you go model with MTSS and how it dovetails into intervention and how that all both and EC. But I would say this is kind of an overarching philosophy here. You need to be paying better attention to IEPs so that you don't write into that you try to in the IEP exclude duplication of services. Is my that's not this is just Dale's solution to this problem because I'm asked this question all the time. My response is you got to make sure that your EC people and your intervention / MTSS people are collaborating so that when you write IEPs for kids, you don't duplicate services. And that's why one of the reasons I keep making that point, not very well, Liz made it better than I did tonight, is that when a kid starts any kind of intervention, you got to treat them like they're EC. They get the same rights and privileges, and you need to start collaborating with the EC teacher at that point. So eventually that when you get further on into this thing, you don't end up duplicating services and you don't have it written into their IEP that they get this and that and the other.
And that's
And
what
I'll add a qualifier. I'm not the principal, so I'm going to bend the rules a little bit, but our EC staff are all brand new first year teachers with no prior experience. So the handoff from MTSS to EC has not been a great one. And so we have had parents come back saying they regret signing consent for EC because the service time and the level of support completely drops off. And that has been a kick in our guts. So we are now doing it in tandem, but our situation is unique and I'm making bad calls on the behalf of kids. I'm not the one legally, and I'm not the principal who hired and lost the EC teachers that could have done a better job. So I don't know that my approach would have been standard at other schools with other supports, but I've been tracking the data of our kids that qualified SLD in second grade this year. And within 2 months of them leaving the intervention protocol that we had with a research-based intervention going to EC that couldn't name what they were doing, the data dropped off harsh and we had parents knocking on our door trying to figure out how to get back into the intervention program because they at least knew what was going on.
Right.
So that's where we're layering in. And that's going to be something that the principal has to adjust. So I guess maybe my approach is not a sweeping statement of how other people do it, but I will say overall, we were told, like we've learned that even if they're doing okay with tier 3, but you find there is a disability, they're not going to catch up and they qualify for EC. If you can still provide tier 3 that was helping along with EC and it doesn't take away from core, you can do both, but the EC trumps anything else because it should be individualized to the student. But I'll say sometimes if you look at their goals, their goals are like student will read a consonant short vowel consonant word with 8 out of 10 accuracy over the course of a year. And I'm like, no kid is going to learn to read if you give them a full year to get 8 out of 10 CVC words. We can do much better job at the tier 3 intervention level. If we're doing that on a weekly basis, we will do that in 4 weeks. We don't need a year. And if
Right.
that's how and I have a hard time letting go of my kids that I've seen growth, even though it's not the growth that's going to close the gap. And I can't change the EC world, but I think it's a testimony to making sure whoever is supporting with interventions, whether you have an MTSS coach or not, and whoever is making those EC decisions, if it is an EC teacher, a psychologist, or an assistant principal who's leading the EC team, there has to be a lot of communication between the two.
Mhm.
And as long as you follow the EC law, you are good. But in my heart, I will never let go of those kids that I got so far. And
And
I
you're
can't
not,
fix EC.
and you're not supposed to. That's why I said, if everybody's collaborating and we're
Yeah.
writing that IEP, we can still have intervention in that.
Yep.
See, that's the
And I
thing
do
is
help write IEP goals when I pass kids off from
exactly
MTSS. I go through exactly what I was doing and I make sure that the same level of rigor is matched.
right.
But the problem we've had is that we have IEP writers that come in who don't work at our school and barely work for our district. And they only take what they can see from notes. And I hope that your districts aren't in that position to have people just coming in and writing IEPs. Because I mean, I could go to an
I didn't
artificial
even know that was a
intelligence.
thing.
Yeah,
They're
and we don't
using
have enough.
easy IEP. I know.
No, our teachers write their own IEPs. I was just concerned about the interventionist or the interventionist part coming in during the time when the EC and they're doing
Oh,
inclusion at the
well,
same time.
I think if it depends on how many kids are in there, it depends on if they're working on the same goals, and it depends if they're doing the same approach. We have a hard time when we have one teacher teaching this curriculum of a scope and sequence and going through this way. And then we have somebody else supporting the student at another time, and they're doing it with a different approach or different language or different strategies.
That's
You've
because
already
they're
said
not collaborating. That's
you already
exactly
have a
right.
student with a disability who's not taking in the core, and you're now giving them 3 different terminologies for the same concept. It's no wonder that they're struggling. So yeah, you're right. It's got to be a really good, strong collaboration. So if their
Mhm.
time is overlapping, but they're using the same curriculum or strategy or instruction or goal, I don't know the piece about the EC, whether it has to be the EC person being there or
No,
the
it doesn't.
interventionist, but
When you write that IEP,
if it's
somebody,
inclusion,
yeah, if it's in an inclusion model, it can be done in intervention. That's why I said you
Yeah.
got to make sure that when you write that IEP, that you don't just all of a sudden go cold turkey off of intervention. A lot of the services that the EC kids that are placed EC in intervention in the inclusion model can be done from the intervention staff, so that you don't have that drop off and pick back up, or you don't have that mismatch of terminology that Liz just talked about. It's got to be when a kid gets to interventions, when a kid gets to
If it's like the EC program.
then exactly it's the same thing. You got to bring all those people in. It has to become collaborative. So I said when they get to tier 2, when they start receiving services, actually intervention, not just anecdotals, for all intents and purposes, they're now EC kids, and you need to bring it, and they need to be setting in, and y'all need to be designing these things together so that there is a continuum of services that uses the same language. And there's nothing in the world wrong with putting intervention strategies in an IEP that are not delivered by the EC staff, but are in intervention, but are delivered by the people doing interventions. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't
as long as
duplicate
it's
your
documented and you
services.
can look back and see
Exactly.
what was or was not working. The hard part is that my contract is up at the end of this year. I was paid with a grant from ESSER funds for the MTSS, and this is the end of my 3rd-year contract. And so I am up for grabs wherever the district places me.
Mhm.
So, and they're not funding MTSS coaches at my district anymore.
So what would they have?
Nothing. It's up to the principal to use their allotments to increase class sizes and choose to take a certified position and make an MTSS coach. But I'm at a K2 school where you are already capped at class sizes, so you don't have the flexibility to do that. So
It's gonna look
they,
really weird next year for a lot of places, like because of the loss of the ESSER. Like people are really going to be.
and it depends on how the district decided to use those ESSER money, the ESSER money. And they knew that it was 3 years, and they told me that, and I knew that. I got it. Like, I'm not surprised. For 3 years, they told me this. But now schools are really panicked because we don't have extra money. We don't have Title I funds. We don't have other grants. We don't have any other money coming, and people are freaking out. I'm freaking out because I'm certified K-12 reading. Can you imagine me going to high school and teaching reading? I would not last a day in high school. Like, Quintina, you told me you broke up a fight and you were on the floor, and I was like, Quintina, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. So that's why I'm in this program this year, to give me options,
Yeah.
because Liz Shriver is on the chopping block. So anyway, this was a good conversation. Dr.
Well, you
Lamb,
can
thank
do
you for
reading.
listening.
You can do reading
What?
interventionist. You can be a reading interventionist.
I just don't, I think they would knock me over in the hallway. They would make me cry, Quintina.
I just
I
tripping
am
you up.
I am a little kid person. My jokes did not go over well.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm too much of a soft heart. I'll find a place. It's gonna be
But
great.
you know, whether you realize it or not, we've already toughened you up a lot this semester.
That's true. That's true. You
And
have.
so, yeah, you have the capacity to do more than you think you can. You really do. One of the
I know
things
I'll
that
find
I
a place.
found out early on in my career was the best lesson I ever learned in personnel was that competent people can do anything. And incompetent people, there's no amount of staff development that can make them competent. It's just true. I lost the best teacher that I had, and boy, it was a community uproar. In NCDPI hired away my best first grade teacher, and she was an institution in the community, not just a great teacher. She was an institution in the community, and everybody was like, you know, what's he going to do now? Let's see, see how good he is now. And I had this PE teacher, and she wore nice warm-up suits every day, and she had the best PE classes. And man, those kids, it was just wonderful watching her. And I don't know, I can't tell you that I was smart enough to figure this out. Just one day, I was talking with her, just an ex parte conversation. And I said, how'd you like to teach first grade? And she said, I've always dreamed of that. Next thing I knew, she was teaching first grade, wearing them little jumpers like them primary teachers did. And she was down on the floor, and she was, boy, within 2 weeks, they forgot who Linda Curtis was, the lady she replaced. She was great. And she did the rest. She started in September. They just stayed 30 days and was gone. At the end of the year, she said, I had the best time I've ever had in my life, but I'm ready to go back to the gym now. I've done it. I said, it's fine. We're great. I appreciate what you did. But she was the best PE teacher I ever had. And then she became the best first grade teacher I ever had, because she was a competent person. And her heart was in the right place, and she was there for kids, and she did what she needed to do. And so don't sell yourself short. You can do more than you think you can.
I'm just working to get to a place where I don't get assigned to teach.
Yeah. But
your freshman reading class. I could do, I'm more suited for something else.
Yeah. But we can all do more than we think. We have more capacity than we think we do. But I don't worry about you. You'll be fine.
I will.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. It's good to see y'all tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I enjoyed
Love
the
my team
presentation. You
six.
did a great job as always. I'll see you next week.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.